Well, that'll be the day when I talk about John Wayne and westerns in general. What's up, everybody? How you doing?
Hey,
Chilporial is back, and there's nobody watching right so far. So,
I just
yeah,
I posted it on Twitter, so maybe we'll get some people. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it last week. Work was nuts, like you said, so I'm glad we could reschedule.
yeah. I mean, it happens. I mean, if you want to be honest, I did something even worse. I had a stream schedule with somebody else, and I took a nap, and I overslept. And he's trying to get a hold
It
of me on
happens.
Discord, and so I've been apologizing for a while. So even chilling him and everything. So, but yeah, it happens. So, yeah. So Chilporial is back, and this is the long overdue thing once again. Corey, thanks for getting me
Oh,
these.
dude,
I still haven't
anytime.
opened these, but I've watched some of it. I haven't
It's
opened
a
these yet.
great box set. It's a great box set because um I own virtually everything John Wayne, but that has some great movies on there and some great westerns in particular. And I wish I was getting a kickback from Amazon for promoting it, but watching these movies on a large screen TV, because a lot of them were filmed in CinemaScope or VistaVision, which was this huge type of movie screen that they had, because theaters in the 50s and 60s were watching people not come to the movies like they had historically, because they were watching television.
Yeah.
And the way that they lured them back was these giant panoramic screens in 70 millimeter and all this stuff. And it's just great to see them fully restored instead of just trash cut for 4:3 aspect ratio like old broadcast TV. You
Yeah,
know,
I know. I've I still have not. I mean, outside of spaghetti westerns and maybe some more modern neo westerns, whatever you call it, I haven't seen a whole
Mhm.
lot of older '50s westerns. I mean, I've seen. So my history with westerns, you're gonna be surprised. You know, my first western I've ever seen was Back to the Future Part Three.
Dude, that's not a western. Jesus
I know,
Christ.
but that introduced me to the western genre. I mean, Buford
Yeah,
Tannen was the first villainous
that's fair.
gunslinger I've ever encountered. So even
That's
even to
fair.
this even to this day, Mad Dog Tannen, nobody calls me Mad Dog, is still terrifies me. But then again,
I
I
grew
don't know.
I grew up with my grandfather. My grandfather was born in 1908. And so yeah, I was born in 1970. So throughout childhood on WGN, he would watch the Cisco Kid, he would watch Bonanza, Death Valley Days, all those types of shows. So I grew up watching that in those archetypes, and living also in the middle of nowhere in the 70s and 80s. Back then, obviously, we didn't have the internet, and in a lot of ways, we didn't have an interstate. Like, we had two-lane country roads, and farms, and you saw people on horseback doing things, and you passed people driving tractors down the two-lane road. So it wasn't that far removed um from what we were seeing on the screen, except nobody was riding around shooting the indigenous population. So
Yeah.
you know
that's, that's crazy. I mean, there are still a lot of westerns I still have to see. Like, there's a lot of stuff on my to watch list. I like Deadwood. I have to watch. I like
that's
you. You're
good.
currently playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I have to play Red Dead Redemption 2 because I love. I don't know if you played the
I
first one.
I
The
was
first Red
I
Dead Redemption is a masterpiece. Like, it's my
Purple
favorite.
got it
I
for
like
me,
it
Purple
better.
Valkyrie.
I like it better than any GTA game.
I
I
I
like some
I
of them.
do The last Grand Theft Auto I played was Vice City, and I'm like, okay, I've killed enough hookers and whatever. You know what
I
I mean?
mean,
Like, I like
it's
that game.
basically Scarface the game, basically.
I just I like I do, if I wanted to be a drug dealer, I'm sure I'd be a really successful drug dealer in real life. But I don't do that. I have like a career. And so it's not an escape for me to go around and like do those types of things. I'm seriously, Red Dead Redemption is on my like 65-inch 4K screen, and I'm riding around, and thanks to Purple Valkyrie, she got me into that game, and she actually got me in the voice actor of Arthur Morgan to sign the hardcover compendium, because she met him and took a picture with him for me. And I love that game. I would do anything if the studio that made GTA put out an expansion pack for Red Dead 2 and Red Dead 3. And I'm not the only one. Zax loves that game. Zax and I don't know. I'm just rambling, but who cares? Because this is real. It's not like I'm telling you to vote for Kamala and Tim Waltz or some shit like that. So, what a
Yeah.
shithole. What a shithole world we live in. These people are really working hard to extract us and to destroy the archetypes of America. Now, is it all beautiful and were we always the right guys? No, but no country ever was. In
No.
something like the American West, in the spirit, what they omit when they vilify people is why were people willing to cross these hostile areas where you could die of cholera, where you could die of bug bites, bit by a rattlesnake, trampled by a cow. Why did people go to the middle of nowhere with very little chance of even living, let alone being successful? And the reason is because of how bad it was in Europe. Like when you have absolute control over everything and there's the upper class and there's no upward mobility, and then people would come and they settled out east, but the East Coast, it had the same essential dynamic. Work in a factory and die that way. Oh no, you're going to get on a horse and take off and ride out west and keep riding until you find some free land. And I don't know, that to me quantifies in a lot of ways, I think, is the indelible spirit of America. And I love the cowboy archetype. I love it a lot. And I have an idealized version of it. Now, do I think a lot of them are assholes or anti-heroes? Absolutely. But that is also the world. And, that really to me is seeing John Wayne in The Searchers. Hey, Teresa, you don't see this polished good guy. In a lot of ways, he was really the first anti-hero to be in a Western, because before then it was like there's good guys and there's bad guys, and John Wayne
what about Shane? That's another movie that's on my list. I know Shane was a big influence on Logan in particular, and I know it's the ones with the kid who takes a liking to this guy that just shows up and and everybody turns against him, or I forget. I don't even remember what the story was basically.
I think to me, Westerns are like who you find attractive, like as a woman. Like what do I find attractive in a woman?
Yeah,
and so the Westerns I like are going to be maybe different than what other people like as far as an attractive mate or boyfriend or girlfriend or husband. And for me, I have a pretty narrow but very deep band of Westerns that I do like. And The Searchers, again, John Ford, a remarkable director that if you were ever going to do, Brian, and I'm not telling you what to do, but if you wanted to do a deep dive that would probably get 1 million views, talk about John Ford. And the reason why is John Ford did about 150 movies. 150 movies. He won 4 Best Director Academy Awards, plus 2 more for his documentaries that he did for the United States military during World War II.
I had no idea.
Despite winning all those awards, Brian, he really didn't have any use for the hoity-toity Hollywood types. He didn't even go to get all his Academy Awards. John Wayne would accept him for them because he didn't have time to go and hang out with all the Hollywood types of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So, John Ford, remarkable director. In watching interviews with him, because I brushed up on it a little bit today when I was doing my daily walk, like I hike every day a couple miles, listening to him talk about why and how he did things. He's just like, I just did them because nobody did the things that he did. And you see it essentially from the beginning when you meet John Wayne in the very beginning of this film, Brian. Like if you can go to where you see him riding in. And it's a powerful thing to see. Okay, the door. Oh, okay, this shot.
I like this shot. Actually. Let's go right here.
It changed everything in Hollywood. This shot changed everything in Hollywood. And you can listen to Steven Spielberg did an interview in the 90s talking about who his influences were. John Ford was number one. George Lucas absolutely was hugely impacted by this. There's
Oh yes.
and then Kurosawa, who did the Seven Samurai, credited John Ford with, I mean, because he look at this. This was 1956.
Yes.
I wouldn't be born for 14 years.
Yeah.
Because I'm old. like this came out 14 before my parents were even married, you know? And somebody did this. And you can see this type of thing. It's copied by a lot of people. Quentin Tarantino tries to copy this, and I'm not the world's biggest Tarantino fan. I'm sorry, my brother loves him. Spielberg copied a lot of what he did. The spaghetti westerns riffed a lot off of John Ford's what he did with light and shadow. Same thing with mirror. Kurosawa, John Ford was one of the first filmmakers to ever use mirrors and reflections and have it balanced and have it be focused in a film. No one had done that before. And it's not like, they had cameras like this. Their cameras were hundreds of pounds. They didn't have like steady cams or something like that. So the genius behind this guy and the vision of working with film, he would shoot these things. It would have to be a literal daily where it would have to go and be developed. And then you would watch it and hope you got the scene. It's a testament to not just artistic vision, but also technical mastery, which, when you look at things that are like what Amazon or studios or Disney or whoever it is putting out, we laugh at things like season 1 of the Rings of Power because the incompetence and the lack of vision and just it's all CGI. And this guy, that's not CGI.
No.
This is somebody who went to Monument Valley and knew how to light and expose his film to give you this in 1956.
1956. I know. I mean, I was like, ooh. I'm like, okay, this is a great shot right here. So, and that's the first thing I saw. I was like, okay, maybe this is the all-American epic. This is the all-American Western that people have been saying. But I want to say hello to David Gadfly. Good to meet you a few weeks back at Alex's wedding. Definitely want to read this. Remember, as much as people tend to look down the genre of the Western, you wonder why. It has been quite probably the genre with the most influence on filmmaking. I mean, dude, Quentin Tarantino's favorite movie of all time is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So that just the scene with Hans Landa in the house in the beginning of Inglourious Bastards, that was basically Lee Van Cleef coming into the guy's house in the beginning of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, pretty much. And they did that again in Fallout. My buddy Dred Roberts' favorite scene was, I think, episode 7, where Walton Goggins just shows up in the house and starts eating their food. I was like, that's from Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So yeah, I mean, Western genre has been a big influence in this movie.
Really important.
This movie influenced probably probably one of the most famous movies ever made by George Lucas. But one particular scene, Star Wars, the original Star Wars.
Yes, and I'm not going to steal your thunder about that. And it's okay. So I'm sitting here spurging out. I want to say hello to Nosferatu. Hey, it's great to see you, bro.
Yeah, Nos. I got to tell you, Corey. Nos has gotten me watching another Klaus Kinski movie. I'm watching Fitzcarraldo. You ever hear of that one? Fitzcarraldo?
No.
Oh my God.
Well, I'll have to watch it. But
he wants to. You know how Klaus Kinski looks crazy? Well, that's because he really fucking is crazy. I mean, he is verbally abused the hell out of Werner Herzog and his staff. and yet Werner Herzog keeps rehired him 4 times after.
If he makes you money, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this movie, honestly, Brian, is I sit here and I'm spurging out about the technical ability. I mean, and again, I remember in the 80s carrying these big VHS things for because I was in the AV club, because I am a true nerd. All right. Like, in setting them up to record. And this shit was heavy. These
yeah.
batteries were heavy. But Brian, if you go back to the doorway scene, I have a point with that. And what it is that we studied this in film theory class in both in high school and in college. And the symbolism of this is you're leaving this house. You're look at where they are. They're in Monument Valley. And if you suspend your disbelief, again, you are in the middle of nowhere. There's no telephone lines. There's no train tracks like right outside. The
There's
nearest town
no
is probably
support. There's no
a
support. So
day's ride
if
away.
Comanches come after you or they pay you a visit,
Yeah.
you are screwed.
Well,
Which is what happens in this.
Exactly. And the thing about it is John Wayne played against type in this movie. And what like I alluded to when we first started, this was a departure from his normal, maybe surly, but he was always this, the good guy. In this, he is an anti-hero.
Well, that'll be the day.
But he is really the anti-hero in this movie. Was part of a post-World War II shift to go from the nicey nice Westerns of, say, the 40s, but you had a country that, came out of World War II, people had seen the horrors of war. And a lot of commentary was put into movies coming out around that time in the mid 50s. And John Wayne took a chance with this. And this was, of course, adapted from a very popular Western book. But my point with this is that John Wayne rolls up out of this dust storm, and you see him come in and he's exhausted. There he is. He's a Confederate soldier. He's rough.
Yeah.
He gives off this vibe of I'm dangerous, and it's alluded to that he's a bank robber and a murderer and somebody who just got out of prison after the Civil War. And he plays that character, this hard ass, I have seen it all. I have had to fight my whole life. I don't worry about ethics. I only know what I have to do to keep going guy, all the way through the movie.
So from what I gathered about him, so this is 1868. So this is 3 years after the Civil War ended. Apparently, and I didn't know this, but there was another war going on in Mexico at the time.
Yes.
So apparently France was trying to get another foothold into North America. And they actually tried to establish a Mexican empire. And and because and this was during our Civil War, so Mexico was having its own little civil war going on. So all the conservatives at that time were like, yes, we want an empire because we hate these mother effers that have that we've lost the election to. I don't know if it was an election or something. It was an election in the Republic. And so they came in, and so John Wayne's character Ethan, actually I'm taking it because of the fact that he wasn't ready to go back to normal life, and plus once again he was a Confederate. He probably wasn't ready to go back to normal life, and so he went off and fought in another war, basically. So he went to Mexico and he fought an additional war because he just wasn't ready to come home. I mean, and plus they lost the war, and I don't know. I've been reading so much. I haven't really been reading so much, but I want to read up. Like they're talking about like the whole thing. I don't know how you grew up learning about the Civil War, but they call it the lost cause myth or something. You know what I'm talking about? Where I learned that the Confederates were, they were other Americans who were just misguided. They were normal. They were men.
It's interesting. High school and what they taught us in the 80s is so different than what came even 10 or 15 years later. Now, I taught for a couple of years, and I was like, why, what is this? Because even then, it was like an entire generation was being manipulated into not knowing what things meant. And I make no apologies for saying that. Here we are in 2024. But the Civil War, people like to talk about slavery, but it had very, very little to do with it. I lived in North Carolina and had a friend who was a assistant curator at the North Carolina History Museum. And, the amount of people that owned slaves in North Carolina was like 3%. And a huge percentage of them were African American themselves. But, again, that's not convenient to the globalist narrative. The Civil War, in a lot of ways, was primarily rebelling against a large central government that was going to take the states' rights away. And we're living now in a world in 2024 where it's not just a large federal government, but it's a large federal government occupied by globalists, only doing what people very rich people in Europe, it seems, in banking cartels want them to do without representing us. And you're seeing the same problem happen in the UK. But
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that. I mean,
that's what the Civil War was.
Yeah, I've seen so much. I've seen so much argument about it. I mean,
No,
people.
it
I mean,
wasn't a lost
historians
cause.
say it.
They would have won.
Yeah,
Brian, if Lee would have just crossed the Potomac, the war would have been over. Lee was too cautious. Generally, I mean, and again, the fact they're removing his name and all these Confederate generals' names off of things, it's despicable and it's immoral. Now they're taking George Washington statues out. We all know where this is going. I've seen this movie before. But
yeah, I saw, my first exposure to those, to learning about those men and all that was watching the movie Gettysburg with Martin Sheen as Lee and Tom Berenger as General Longstreet. Believe it or not, Jeff Daniels plays Colonel Chamberlain on the Union side.
Yep.
And
we had to write papers when I was in high school on the major generals on both sides.
Yeah.
And their backstories, why they fought, especially McClellan, who I mean, again, McClellan was a terrible general that, again, if Lee just would have just driven across the river into DC, the war would have been over.
Yeah, because I mean, Richmond and DC are like they're really close in proximity to each other. I mean, Virginia and Maryland are right next to each other.
It's a hard day's ride, maybe 2 days hard ride. I spent some time in DC, so it's and back then you didn't have I-95. You had Cow Pass going through the woods and everything else.
Yeah.
But the fact is the South would have won the war very quickly. And you talked about France's involvement in Mexico. There's another part to this that people don't talk about, and that's that Britain was actually giving money to the South because they had interests in sugar plantations, and they wanted the cotton from the South because they were still pissed off about the Revolutionary War. Now, there's a whole lot of layers and complexity and stuff in this. Was slavery bad? I'm going to say it once. Obviously, but that's not what this war was about. This war was about DC at that time taking away the states' rights to control their commerce, to what they wanted to do, and that's not how the United States was set up. And we've been in this position where more and more control is going to people that we don't elect in bureaucracies, and they were willing to go to war for it back in the 1800s. And now here we are, and depending on how much we get cheated and fucked over in November, we may very well find ourselves in conflict again. And it will be, I'm okay with that, because I'm not going to live like this is the United Kingdom. And if anybody's in chat watching us, I hope you feel the same,
So, I mean, when you said what's funny is I knew about the whole British thing because once again, I did a report on Gettysburg and the movie when I was in 8th grade, and there was a British character in the movie that was kind of there as an observer or something. So at least I think it was in that movie. I think so. I don't know. It's been a while since I studied the Civil War. So, but yeah, it's funny. I like seeing all the arguments online. I'm just like, why is this a thing now and all that? And then people are like, showing proof by like showing some of the state charters, some of the Confederate state charters saying, oh, it's in the charter that slavery is the reason, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just like, I don't know. I need to do a little more research, and that would be an interesting topic for another stream. So,
Yeah. I mean, the thing about this, with all of this, and to bring it back to the movie and why I went off on that tangent was, John Wayne is an anti-hero, and
yes.
I mean, again, he is living in the frontier now. As somebody who's lived in Texas, and when I lived in Texas, I wouldn't say I lived in a survivalist compound, but I might have lived in a town that would fit that bill. When you are out there remote, and I have a truck, I
Yeah.
have air conditioning, but
Hmm.
to go, like, I used to walk my dog, it would be 120 degrees outside for basically 3 months. And there's the river, and the river is this deep in winter, and then it's a trickle in summer. And you think about somebody living in a shack, trying to get by, trying to make sure their cattle aren't, taken away or rustled, while having the, people like the enemy who comes and rips the top of your scalp off and then takes your children away. I mean,
Hmm.
we need to take a moment and think about what it took for somebody to want to be in that situation, as opposed to being a slave in a factory. And you need a man, if you can go back to that last picture, you need men like, I think his name is Ethan in this movie, John Wayne's character.
Yeah.
John
Ethan.
Wayne's character is not a perfectly good guy. He's not a perfectly
No,
bad guy, but what he is he is a protector, right or wrong. And in this movie, in our 2024 sensibilities, people are like, well, he says all this racist things. At the time when he was living in a war zone. Okay. And, you can use whatever terms you want. This character
what
is
about
authentic.
what about Blanket? I've heard Blanket Head. Is that because he calls
That's
the Jeffrey Hunter
yeah,
Blanket Head? Is that supposed to be
yeah.
derogatory because he's
It's a
partially Native
yeah,
American?
it's an now we have to call them Native Americans, but yeah,
Well,
it was a derivative term, but
I
again, it was
you know
based out of
why
New
you know
York.
why I say Native American, not to confuse Native Americans with Indians from India, basically. I don't know.
No, I grew up surrounded by reservations in the upper northern Midwest. Where I live now,
Hmm.
I got a reservation over there half an hour away, and another reservation 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
By golly.
and I hang out with people that are of the Sklallam tribes and the other tribes that we have here. And
Yeah.
I go, and I mean, like, I don't know, here we are. And, my I just, it's like if somebody called somebody a wop or a dago in the 30s or 40s, and now we all have to sit here and apologize for what our great grandfathers or grandfathers did. And I'm not playing that game. I'm just not. This is how people talked. This is what they did. And there's things that we said in the 70s and 80s and 90s that now there's assholes saying that I'm a racist or I'm this or I'm that because they need to make shit up. And it's like, you know
Yeah.
what? This is how the world is. And I'll tell you what, if we lose power or we get invaded, let me tell
I'm
you how quickly those delicate sensibilities are going to go right out the door, and you're going to
I
need a
I
man
I
like
think
him.
a lot of that attitude, just that a lot of that mentality and attitude just comes from privilege, and
Yeah,
not understanding putting themselves in the place of people that lived
in
in
knowing
these
what
type of
work
times.
is.
Yes.
And not only, I mean, like, you want to see what it's like, knock the power out on your house, turn the water off, go get a bucket, walk to your local
Yeah,
river,
you got
then boil it, clean,
yeah.
go and shoot your own game, clean your own. I mean,
I
like,
mean,
I've
yeah,
had a homestead and just taking care of animals like chickens and goats and turkeys. Like, dude,
and going
you
to
don't
school
worry about
was
the
like a
Twitter.
luxury. Like going to school
Oh
for
yeah.
kids was a luxury. A lot of times they had to stay
Yeah.
home and they had to help out. They had that, and they learned quite a bit of skills, and then they passed on their kids, and then their kids pass it on to their kids, and so forth and so forth. So I
But it was
mean,
the same thing even when I was in high school in the 80s. It was big farm country. And so when harvest was going, the kids weren't in school. When it was deer season, nobody was in school.
mhm.
When I mean, like, all of those seasons, bear season, turkey season, why? Because you hunted because you didn't have money to fill your freezer. you
Yeah.
know? And this is not like 100 years ago. This was in the 80s. And I know there's people still doing it because I see them where I live now. It's the same thing with salmon fishing. People do it because they're poor and they fill up their freezer and then they barter with other people or they sell it to restaurants to get money. And deer hunting, the same thing. And the people criticizing this have no idea how to do any of the things that they're criticizing or why people do them. You know, they order, I don't know, they press a button on a phone and they have somebody like their slave drive up with Taco Bell. I mean, like, dude,
Mhm.
I could, that just sounds like an Orwellian hell to me, as opposed to, you know, I'm gonna go out, I don't know, I just, and I'm not going to apologize for that because, you know, when the sun creates an EMP, I'm the guy you want to talk to, you know, not the they them.
Yeah, I'll keep that. I will definitely keep that in mind. Just let's get back. So going back to the movie. So basically, John Wayne comes, or John Wayne's character comes back from the war, and he's. I
Mhm.
think I don't know if he's seen his brother's family for the first time.
Yeah.
It's actually a cool shot right here.
Yeah. Yeah. In the
And
other thing, there's so much subtext to this where it seems like maybe the woman that his brother married was actually his lady, and it's never explicitly said. And this is the guy that's 1/8 Comanche or Cherokee that
you know,
John
you know,
Wayne
you know,
mercilessly razzes.
yeah,
Mercilessly.
you know who that is. That's the original captain of the Enterprise. That's Jeffrey Hunter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell
I
by
mean,
the eyes. They're all blue eyes.
this is going to sound very, very gay, but look at that face. Like, he's got the face of a freaking movie star. I mean, the
No,
blue
well,
eyes.
he's very archetypical
Yes.
50s, early 60s leading man.
Yes.
And I mean, this guy would be a great actor, you know, now. I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, he's a handsome dude. And the thing about it is I actually believe that he's, you know, part, you know, 1/8 or whatever it is,
Yeah. I
Native
mean,
American.
yeah. I mean, I could definitely say that to him. By the way, first time I've seen you, Chuck Jose Channel. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here. It's awesome.
Cheers.
It's always cool to see new people pop in and to say hello and stuff. Don't Yeah, feel free to chat. Say wherever you want. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is yeah. But going back to this, like he was basically adopted. If I'm trying to remember correctly,
Mhm.
he was adopted into his
John Wayne
brother's
found him.
family. Oh, John Wayne found him.
John John Wayne found him. He was part of a wagon train that was going, and the family was massacred. And he was this John Wayne found this character, like in a ditch or buried somewhere, crying, and then brought him home.
And he brought in
And
his
still,
brother's family, and his brother's family basically raised him or something.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, that
yeah,
makes sense. So the reason why I was because like I was like, okay, there is a reason why it comes with him. Is because
yeah,
he has a stake in this too. So
yeah,
one thing I was looking forward to was seeing him and John Wayne and their dynamic together. And I'll be honest, John Wayne's character in this movie kind of reminds me a little bit of just he reminds me a little bit of Land from A Wheel of Time. You know, just has that very that type of like you said, that type of archetype and all that. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
seeing him in particular, he's got a little bit of Rand and a little bit of Perrin, especially the whole thing where he's courting the girl, and they're talking about like him writing letters and all that. Um, in the Shadow Rising, we find out
mhm,
that Perrin did not write it all
yeah,
and all that, and we find out what happens,
yeah,
because he didn't
yeah,
do that. And that was
yeah,
one of the few times like I was like I got Robert Jordan gut punched me. But yeah, there's a lot of wheel. I suspect that Robert Jordan was a big fan. This is probably one of his favorite movies, and he took some
yeah.
ideas for some of his female characters like Nynaeve and from the Vera Miles character. I forget her name.
Well, these are
Jorgensen.
some tough. These are some tough women, and again, you know, it wasn't just the men who did everything when people crossed the country to try to not get murdered by everybody and everything, and not die of rattlesnake bites and water poisoning and food poisoning
Yeah,
and cholera,
the women
everything.
worked hard too. Yeah, they had
Yeah,
women made sure that they did their stuff too. They were working their asses off
well,
too.
they had to,
Yeah,
shoot and sew. I mean, sew up wounds and treat. I mean, it had to be two functional adults, equally invested. And again, the symbology of this film with John Wayne assuming this anti-hero archetype, which was unique again because this changed the Western genre, and you started to see more of the anti-hero movies, which directly led to the spaghetti westerns. And in a lot of ways, you can trace a path to what Spielberg did, what Lucas did, and then again Quentin Tarantino, whatever. I mean, he kind of does.
Speaking of what Lucas did, where's the right?
Yep.
Right here.
Yep. There to go back to the door. Yeah, it's literally Lucas almost did it exactly. Like almost frame for frame. It's an homage to The Searchers when Ethan, John Wayne's character, rides back to find his family dead.
Yeah, and right here, him staring at it kind of makes me think of Luke staring in shock.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. And I think Lucas in interviews said that it really inspired him. And also this scene also in this movie, Kurosawa was also deeply inspired by this movie and all of John Ford's work. Not the other way around.
That's very interesting to hear, Kurosawa.
You should check out some of the interviews where he talks about John Ford and how it impacted him, because they actually do a side-by-side of Kurosawa with John Ford, and some of it's from this movie, and it's like, oh my God, like, and you don't think about that. Everybody knows that Lucas was influenced by Kurosawa, but no, Lucas was really influenced by John Ford.
Did John Ford also do Stagecoach, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, he did. He did. I'm 90%, and I'm gonna cheat. Stain. Yeah,
and what about Rio Bravo? They do Rio Bravo. That's Howard Hawks. Sorry, that's Howard.
That's Hawks. Howard. Yeah, Howard Hawks. Different flavor of Western, and I love Howard. Yeah, it was directed. Stagecoach was John Hawk or John Ford.
Okay, cool. All right.
And so, if everybody wonders why I look weird, it's because I'm working with a very, very large, curved monitor in front of me, and I'm sitting where I normally work for a living because I didn't want to tear everything down to go into the studio, just because I need this for tomorrow because I'm on camera a lot for work, and not in a good way. I don't have an OnlyFans page, so
I liked it. I like right here. So like they figure out. I think they see a dead cow or something, and they figure out that that the dead cow was like was a distraction, and that they were gonna attack one of the homesteads or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know much
it's a decoy.
about. I'm like trying to think, how do they know that? But then again, I don't know much about, how they track, or how, or seeing signs that, Native Americans
take you hunting, Brian. We should go hunting.
Probably. I've never, I went shooting a couple times, but I never hunted. So yeah,
it's a different thing. It's a different thing, man. It's it gets you in a lot of different ways. I grew up doing it. But it comes down to, it brings you closer to your humanity. Like when you raise animals, when you raise chickens, or you raise goats, and when you do all those things, and you have to clean up, muck the barn or whatever it is, and then when you have to, when you take down the animal and you have to clean the animal, and then you understand that you've taken a life. I mean, these are powerful things. And it's part of being a human being. And it has been part of being a human being ever since we developed into Homo sapiens with the ability to have language and complex thoughts. And it's only been in the last generation or so that somehow all of that humanity has been vilified. And you can't show it on the screen, and you can't show it. And that's why movies like this, they're very visceral. And I think they're really important. I don't know. What does chat think?
And he haven't got anything yet. So, but this part right here says tells me. So right here, so they figure out. So he basically says, they're going to come after one of our homesteads, and right away, Jeffrey Hunter's like, okay, we got to get going. We got to go right away. And he's like, wait. we have to feed the horses, we have to
Yes.
clean them, we have to take care of them before we do that. And he does this, and then he comes off as kind of cold, but then you see this shot right here, and he's terrified. He's basically terrified, and
well, you got to take care of your horses
and concerned. And what's funny is the next scene we see that, or maybe not the next scene, but the next scene with him and Jeffrey Hunter lost his horse because of that. And Jeffrey Hunter's like, "Can you give me a ride?" And he just rides off past him. He's like, "I told you so." He's like, "I told you so."
Yeah.
So I mean, so once again, this is him and the young Jeffrey Hunter. Jeffrey Hunter wasn't that young, but he's a guy with experience, and it's basically a guy with experience and a guy that doesn't have experience. And you like that dynamic, but
yes.
What I really want to talk about is this scene right here. And you're just like, oh, something bad's going to happen. Look at the lighting. Look at the red. I mean, just look at the red. I mean, it's like death is coming for this house, basically, right here.
In the symbology where you have the family outside of the house, and now they're in this big bad world, because the interior of the house, and there's look, there's family. It's feminine. It's kind. It's nurturing, right?
Yeah.
But you can see outside that world is still brutal, and it is a world for the John Wayne anti-hero character of Ethan. You need men to keep that world outside from getting into that house. And this is so fucking important. And it's something that I really believe in watching this movie, is that you may not like what John Wayne's anti-hero says. You may think he's a racist. You may think that he's uneducated. You may think that he's uncouth, but you need a man like him to stay in this house, to keep the women and the children safe. And you need somebody like Snake Plissken or any other anti-hero that you can think about to be out on that wall so that you can live in this little illusion, this little haven of safety. Because without them, all that bad stuff gets from the outside gets in.
Yep. I mean, well, let's be honest. Snake Plissken is just Kurt Russell imitating Clint Eastwood. Call me Snake. Okay, maybe not, or maybe not quite, but yeah. But I think there's some Clint. Maybe some Lee Van Cleef too. Even though Lee Van Cleef is himself in that movie. So that's probably wise.
He's so great in that movie too.
You gonna kill me, Snake? I don't know. Maybe later. I don't know. Maybe I gotta get like an eye patch or something. I love.
You gotta grow your hair out like me, dude.
I don't have hair. That's my problem. I look like freaking.
I'll do it. Yeah, we could do it here. I'll do it. Yeah. Call me Snake.
Yeah. But I like this scene right here. The subtext. Like the subtext is just, I'm just watching this, and the subtext is just like he's saying, I'm gonna go outside and get some additional chickens or something like that. And right away the wife is just like, and they know something is going on. There's something wrong. The girls have no idea. Especially the older daughter, I think they're making like a lot of noise, and she tells them to be quiet. Heck, even the son knows something's up.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. You were expected, and we can sit here and play this patriarchy game all you want, but if you're a 10-year-old boy in the Old West, you will be expected to pick up that rifle and use it and keep firing to protect your sister, who may be 10 years older than you or 5 years older than you. And it is the burden and responsibility of being a man. Now, she's more than welcome to pick up a firearm if she knows how to use it. But this is how civilization was able to exist. Was this dynamic, and it was a separation of responsibilities. Everybody's equal. Nobody's thinking like that, because they all have one shared outcome. We're going to survive, and then we're going to thrive. When you have me, or I think I'm this, or I want to chop that off, your civilization stops, which is what we're in the middle of right now in 2024.
I'm with you on that. Seeing this scene now after knowing what happens is heartbreaking.
It's terrible.
Because so
Yeah.
Like she the older daughter to the right has no clue what's going on. She keeps lighting the things like we need light, and the mother's like stop, and like do I have
Yeah.
to tell you? And then she realizes it,
Yeah.
and then she starts screaming out loud like
Screaming.
right. She
Yeah.
starts seeing it right here.
Yeah.
And look at
Yeah.
it.
She
I mean,
knows they're
yes.
outgunned. Like, and what's going to happen to her? Probably the worst thing that
Oh
you can
my
imagine.
god. Yes.
The worst things that you can imagine.
And probably
And
John
again,
Wayne's best scene. John Wayne's
yeah,
best delivered scene in this movie, the most heartbreaking
agreed.
scene, is when they find her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
In
he's like,
so
"Do you
much of
want
it,
me to?" He's like, "Do you want me to
I mean,
to
yeah,
spell it out for you? Don't ask me again," and all that. And it's interesting
it's,
hearing him say that because I just watched Band of Brothers,
uh-huh.
and they said the men who've seen bodies and of their friends, like they have said, I cannot go back and see that, and I
No,
do not ask me to talk about it. Do not ask me
no.
to do that. And it just it's traumatizing, and
Well, you put it in a
even for a man,
box.
it fucks with you.
Well, I mean,
And
first of all, it's
especially
family.
with family too.
That's it. I mean, and why does a character, an anti-hero, somebody like John Wayne, what separates an anti-hero from a villain? Because the villain in this is Scar, who is the Comanche chief, okay? And maybe not an imaginative name,
I mean,
but Scar,
yeah, to me,
good.
a villain is basically a character that has no redeemable qualities. We don't see their side of the story because we don't need to. They're the bad guy. I mean, they're there to provide obstruction, to provide bad stuff, to provide bad stuff for our heroes, and they are there for us to get invested in our heroes when they do bad stuff. When they are so, I really love the idea of having our heroes, the heroes in the movies that we watch, up against insurmountable odds. So that's a part of the reason why I have a problem with
Yeah.
the Wheel of Time, because it feels like Robert Jordan's doing the opposite. I feel like the Forsaken and the Shadow are the underdogs because of how overpowered Rand Thor is. But that's a statement for another. That's a statement for another.
That would be, I think it would be interesting to compare heroes, anti-heroes, and villains, because again, I don't put anti-heroes in the same box as a hero.
Yeah.
But in this case, you have John Wayne, who's doing really horrible things,
Yeah.
who's bushwhacking people, bushwhacking the enemy. He hates his enemy, which I approve of, because if you have clarity, and you know morally and ethically and physically who the enemy is. I hate to say it, but when you're in the situation where no one's coming to save you, you know what you have to do, and what you have to do is everything. And you
Dan, it's
cannot let
really
go of that hate. Go ahead.
sorry, Corey. Dan, it's really good to see you. Thanks for being a member. Thanks for being here. It's good. It's good to see you, man. Thanks. Yeah. This is my first time seeing the Searchers, so I initially was like, I don't know if I like this. I like part of it. I watched some of it again. I'm really appreciating, and I'm starting to see why it's considered the all-American Western, the American Western of all time.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, you cannot be overstated John Ford's impact on cinema. This movie, when it came out in 1956, launched a new archetype of the anti-hero, which is where you end up with somebody like Snake Plissken, the wisecracking guy who begrudgingly does the right thing, sometimes not even wanting to. And it's a character that we've grown to love through the films that we all know in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And yet that anti-hero still has a very clear-cut villain.
Yeah.
John Wayne does something in here where and it's after she's brutalized and murdered that young girl, after everyone that he knows and loves basically is, except for one girl who they take. He desecrates the grave of Comanche, and he actually shoots out the Comanche's eyes, And he says he does it because if he does that, he can't find his way to the happy hunting ground, or, some convoluted thing about the Native American afterlife, because he hates his enemy so much that even in death, he wants them to suffer and be alone. And it's so fucking dark, and yet it's so powerful, because again, in 1956, the United States we had just come out of World War II. We were just shit was starting to go down in Korea because the industrial military complex needed to make money and have been fucking with us ever since. But I mean, as a country, the country that existed before Japan declared war in 1941, and the country that we came out of after VE Day and VJ Day, is very different understanding what true evil is. And everybody talks about how evil the Nazis were, and they were. But the Empire of Japan was just as brutal and vicious.
Yeah, they like their POWs. I mean,
they tortured. They POWs were treated experiments on our boys that the Japanese captured. They did in China, like seriously.
I mean, I don't know how accurate the Great Escape is with how they treated American prisoners of war. I mean, compared to their concentration camps.
Toward the end of the war, I think it got a lot worse. But in the beginning of the war, especially with aviators, they wanted to have some certain rules in place. And then, but the problem is, the United States, after they declared victory in Europe, we did the Nuremberg trials, which is all the horrible shit that the Nazis did. And there's a lot of them. The concentration camps, the medical experimentation. But people were so tired of sitting through those trials that they basically let the Japanese concentration camp people just all go. And I think it's one of the worst mistakes we've ever made. And it's because you have got to destroy evil. You cannot just look at evil and go, okay, well, we got bored of doing this. I guess you can go. And we're doing it right now. We've been doing it probably since, I don't know, 2020. But when you just like, evil's like, okay, well, no biggie. And then you turn your back. Guess what evil does? It picks up a knife and it fucking comes at you again. So
I got a question since we're talking about the idea. Oh, by the way, I want to read Nas's thing right here. Spaghetti westerns end up being the more gritty and compelling subgenre that more favorably looks upon now. That's more looked upon now. Forget how the true American westerns were also masterpieces. Yeah.
Sergio Leone was directly impacted and credited John Ford because John Ford developed a lot of interesting techniques that Hollywood hadn't been doing until then.
Yeah.
And one of them is there's a scene where Tuco in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you see the camera pan up and you get the perspective of the noose hanging in front of him. That's directly taken in The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. Everybody knows that from what John Ford did like 10 years earlier. It's just everybody was taking what John Ford did and it didn't bother him, but people gave him credit. And it's just, you cannot overstate how important he was as a director in this film, with our 2024 attention spans. It's a little hard to sit through. And then there's a love story. And then it's like, well, why is this happening? But it's so important because it's an epic. It is an epic.
It's based off of a book, so the love story part would just I wouldn't even be surprised if a certain author of the Wheel of Time read the book too, but that's just speculation. That's something I currently suspect.
I wouldn't doubt it.
But this right here is the scene that we were talking about. That this is John Wayne's best scene. This is the scene where the daughter, I forget her name, so that's the boyfriend. He's one of the Jorgensens, one of that family. Vera Miles' brother, and he's like, I think I saw her. He's like, you thought you saw her, you didn't see her. He's like, how do you know? Because I found her in the canyon. And he didn't go into description, like, well, he's like, well, what happened? He's like, don't you ask me, you want a description?
And John Ford talked about that later in some of the last interviews before he died, where he talked about, I did a lot of build up to great violent scenes. but I didn't want the movie to be about all this gratuitous violence. He said the drama in presenting conflict or battle, whether it's a tribe of Indians attacking or a shootout, is the violence happens very suddenly and it's very chaotic, and you don't know if who's alive until it's like that, and it's and he does that. He does this. It's not a slow burn, but he builds and he builds and he builds, and then he sits to let you look at what is about to happen, and he creates this panorama. And in this movie, it's Monument Valley, which I've been to, which is just fucking gorgeous. And not radioactive now like it was when John Wayne was there shooting this, probably, but because that's where we tested the Hiroshima bombs, and they didn't know about fallout and stuff like that, but which is probably why he got cancer. But John Ford, it was so about, look at this. Just look at this scene. This is 1956. The guy's got a ridiculously huge old camera, probably with 35 or 70 millimeter film in it. He's using manual light meters. Why can't they do that today? And it just like where it's and I know the answer, and it breaks my fucking heart.
Just to be
but
different.
It's like, this is why I cannot bitch about things like the Rings of Power or fucking She-Hulk, because you know what? They are. Look at this. I mean, look at this.
Yeah.
How can you call things that we're getting now entertainment?
I love the I love the silhouette look right here. The silhouette looks very appropriate, very Western, and I mean, and this is during the winter, so I mean, you get a diverse range of scenery right here. It's not just desert. I mean, they're up in the mountains too, so just like in the Great Silence. But we'll get to that. We'll get to Sway Westerns eventually. But yeah, I'm liking these shots right here. There was another one earlier where they were riding. Oh, what do you think of this little battle right here where they're on the ford and they're being flanked by the Indians, and then they're being chased and all that? This was pretty sick. And they fight him off.
But John Ford, every frame you see is absolutely deliberate. And I read something where John Ford, when he cast extras for his films, whether anybody who's like a dude riding in the cavalry who never speaks, and even his other films in black and white, the casting he did a casting process for the people who were in the background, because it was so essential to him to create exactly the scene and the emotion and the look, an authenticity where you are there. And you can see it in this film too, with some of and you can see it in the cavalry officers, and he did other movies about like the Great Depression and stuff like that. But just the attention to detail and authenticity. And I mean, look at this. You believe that it's 1868. And again, having lived in Texas and knowing what it's like to be, and then spending time in New Mexico too, it just, the way the light is captured in those valleys with those huge stone structures, they couldn't do it today. They wouldn't know how to do it today. And it's stunning. It's just so stunning.
Yeah, this is right here is where the scene happens, and he finds out she's gone, and he runs off and he gets himself killed right here. It's heartbreaking.
I mean, again, you don't need to spell things out. And Hitchcock did a great job with this too, where, whatever the audience can think of or fear or imagine has happened is so much worse than you can possibly put on the screen.
Absolutely.
And look at this shot. Look at this shot. This
looks like a painting. This looks like a painting.
A Remington.
Right here. Yes.
This looks like a Remington, that Western painter. And I know there's a Canadian one, and I wish Zach was in the chat, because I went to the Canadian Natural Art Museum, but they have all of these beautiful paintings of their own Canadian West and what it looked like. But this looks like an oil painting. It does. It doesn't look real. And this dude did this in 1956, probably from the back of a pickup truck with this big 300-pound camera.
Yep. That's right. I mean, look at this. It's beautiful, beautiful shot. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I was honestly, when I first watched this, I was not expecting the love story part. Now, I think the love story part's kind of funny, but I was kind of not expecting it. I was expecting the entire movie to be basically a
Yeah.
journey with,
Yeah.
between, a journey between with John Wayne and Jeffrey Hunter, and maybe down the line they meet a woman, kind of like the way Perrin meets Fael and the Dragon Reborn. As cringe as that was, but hey, what can I say?
I think it's a function of cinema at that time because husbands were going to bring their wives or boys their sweetie, that they needed something like that. It's also at the time that this was on, westerns were the most watched thing on television. Every major show on the old TVs in the mid to late 50s was a western.
Yeah,
And so, there men liked them, women liked them. So you had to have something in there. And also, the 50s in filmmaking, it wasn't kind of about the nihilism that we kind of got in the 70s, in even toward the late 60s. You needed to
yeah.
kind of show the more human side. And I know what you mean, Brian, because that scene annoyed me when I was younger. But now I look at it as this is the placeholder to show what they're fighting for, because years go by. It's not like he finds his niece in a week. It is fucking
5 years,
years.
5 years. So like
5 years.
so all of a sudden in the beginning of the movie, the niece is a little girl, and then
Yep.
she becomes Natalie Wood, basically.
Yep.
Natalie Wood, basically.
Yeah.
So
And it's crazy. This movie is able to talk about some really mature topics, especially for 1956, in a way where you can watch it and what's been done to her without
yeah.
them saying what's been done to her. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that is good writing. It's good writing because it rewards me because I'm not a fucking moron in the modern audience. And for me watching this, because I can imagine horrible things, and those horrible things are what happened, and I don't need someone to spell them out.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I like how here, like, there's another dark moment where they're trying to do some
Yeah.
bartering, and he accidentally buys this one guy's daughter or
Oh
something.
God, yeah.
And so I think she starts following them.
Yes.
Right there, you see her following them. But
Yeah.
then they ask her about, because she's a Comanche, they ask her about Scar,
Scott.
and she runs off. And
Yeah.
then after she runs off, apparently she got caught up in an attack by
Massacre.
by
Yeah.
the soldiers, and they find her. Right. Well, let's see if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like he feels bad
So
for sending her away. He's an anti-hero.
Yeah.
And you can tell he doesn't hate all Indians or all Native Americans in whatever game we're going to play with that. But he felt responsibility. And what that does is, even though John Wayne in this movie, to our 2024 sensibilities, is a racist, everybody's a fucking racist, but he's this deep anti-hero who's violent and who's impatient and who's bullheaded and who is just like, holy shit, this guy's kind of crazy and obsessed. But you realize, he is the hero of this story because he has to save this girl. And it's interesting because there's a certain point in the movie where his way of saving his niece, who is now, I think they say she's taken a buck, meaning one of the Braves have been passing this girl around, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's better for him to find her because he owes it to her to put her out of her misery. And you know exactly what that means in this movie.
Yeah. So here is so this is, so they actually find her. They find Scar in the encampment, because of a lead. They go to Mexico and all that. A Mexican guy leads them there, and they try to do something. And after they find out that she's one of Scar's wives, basically, John Wayne tries to shoot her, and here is Jeffrey Hunter basically shielding her, telling, "What the hell's wrong with you, dude?" And let's just say that kind of because she says she doesn't want to come with. she's a Comanche now. And it's so I thought it was so interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure where that hatred came from. Well, probably from the fact that his brothers and his family, the rest of his brother's family are dead, and she's the only one left, and she's saying she's going to stay with the Comanche. I mean, it's
a betrayal. It's a betrayal to him. That's the way I'm reading it.
Yeah,
and also, what did he fight these wars for? He didn't just fight these wars. I mean, he fought these wars, for what he believed in, but also for his family to live in the kind of world that he wanted to. And that's why I think a well done anti-hero is so important, because he is willing to do the things that a hero historically doesn't. And those things are ugly, and they require being vicious, and sometimes dancing the line of slipping from neutral to use evil tactics to accomplish a good neutral outcome.
This part here was really messed up. So apparently, I they nick him with a blade or something. It made me think of Brad Pitt and the Nazis and Inglourious Bastards. Carving stuff. Because I mean, everybody knows Native Americans or certain tribes like to scalp people, basically. So I don't know if this is the same thing. I don't know if this is a marking. This means you're forever ours or something.
Well,
like that.
you know what the boys, what the men of the tribe did to those little girls. That's what that symbol is.
Yeah. Wait,
they've been despoiled, and now the whole world gets to know that they were despoiled.
And so as in okay, okay, all right.
Yeah.
It's still messed up.
If you're okay living in a kind of world where your enemy does that to kids, then you won't like the anti-hero John Wayne is this movie. And sometimes we have to simplify these things that those people who are leftists like to convolute. I'm not. I would do what John Wayne did. I probably wouldn't do it for 5 years, but I would take a lot of them out of him, until like, all right, maybe a year or two. And I'm like, well, shit, and then maybe go back. But John Wayne, again, he has nothing to go back to, because he was in the Civil War. He lost the war with Mexico and France and the United States, all this other stuff. He's a mercenary. It's all he has. He doesn't have a family. He doesn't have a wife. I still think the woman his brother married was probably his sweetheart. And then he went away to war. So, all he has in his heart is, I wouldn't say it is hate, but I think he has rage. And having a place to commit his rage, I think gives him clear purpose. I'd like to think he had a happy ending, but even the end of the movie, like, we'll talk about that when we get to it. It's wow.
I mean, but going back to this really quickly. I mean, we see like what they did. I mean, like you said, they despoiled these women, and we see, and I like how John Ford had the guts to show, like, the psychological impact of or psychological results of what happened to these women. Like they're gone.
They weren't just tortured. They weren't just used by the men, but when white settlers were taken in by the tribes, the Native American women brutalized them.
Like look at this older woman right here. She's nuts. No offense.
Well, I mean, the within the tribes, the women also brutalized these women, used them like slaves, tortured them, physically tortured. Yeah. And again, this is unrestricted warfare.
Yeah,
it's we're talking about a wild, because it was the wild, it was the frontier, where you have unrestricted warfare, or you can debate the merits of should European settlers ever settled into, like, we can play that fucking game, but I'm not doing it. We live in 2024. These things have happened. If you're in this situation and you're in the West and you see people coming to do these things, and they're going to do them to your family, what are you going to do? Are you going to appeal to their good nature, or are you going to grab your 308 and fight until your last cartridge? And if you have to, prevent your wife and your little girls from being taken. And you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, this was the world. And again, what motivated people to get in a wagon and go out into a place they were guaranteed to die of something? That game Oregon Trail is real for a reason.
Have you seen 1883? 1883 kind of is like that too.
No, I'll
So
have to check it out. But
you'll
I mean,
have
it is true.
it's heartbreaking. 1883 is heartbreaking. I'll say that. But
I believe
it's
it.
basically they go to Oregon and they all the stuff
Oh,
that you brought up,
Dan.
all the stuff that you brought up is it happens in that show, and it's heartbreaking. But yeah, Dan Crane has became a member of Salty Traveling
Thank
Sea.
you.
So
I will go back to doing live streams. I needed a break, and I'm not just give me 10 seconds. The reason why I've been doing YouTube is a whole lot of reasons. And Brian, no, you can see what's going on YouTube. There's lots of stuff behind the scenes. It's not drama. But with current entertainment, I'm going to refocus. And I think I've been swamped professionally, and I haven't wanted to bitch about bad entertainment anymore. Like I just can't
yeah,
take it because I'm trying to fill my psyche and my soul with good entertainment. And believe it or not, what entertains me the most these days is listening to Art Bell. So old Art Bell shows. So I may start doing
I've
some
heard
stuff
coast to
again.
coast. I've heard coast to coast. Yeah. So
We should, I have so many woo-woo articles, and Purple Valkyrie and I talk all the time, and we're talking about doing a woo-woo show. But Dan, that means a lot. It's just um I didn't leave you guys, although it may feel like it, but what I did is I needed to put all of the stuff with Hollywood, which is meant to demoralize us. I needed to push it out of my life and then think about something positive to do, that is still entertaining, you know?
yeah, speaking of coast to coast, I remember going on I was driving home on a road trip from a road trip, and it was nighttime, and there's nothing better than listening to Coast to Coast and hearing all these crazy stories from
Listen
Art
to it
Bell
at night.
in the middle of the night when you're alone in the car, and
It's
it's just
great.
only thing there only light that is only a light that is there's on your dashboard, on your instrumentation from your
Yes.
headlights, and that nothing else. It's like it's completely dark otherwise, and you're hearing hearing
Yes.
these stories and everything. I was just like, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can go to archive.org and enter in Art Bell or Coast to Coast, and you can download
YouTube,
all
he's
those
on
things on
YouTube.
MP3.
Yeah, and yeah, they're
There's
on
some,
YouTube too.
but they took them down because they were trying to monetize them, and I think with George Norrie, who I think is okay, but nobody compares to Art Bell. But Brian, we should listen to the he has a Father Malachi series of videos where this guy was an exorcist for the Vatican and then
Yeah,
retired. Holy shit, man. Like, you would talk about getting creeped out. I'll have to send you the links to those. But sorry, chat. Like, this is what fires me up is I swear to God, Brian, I am going back to everything that I might have missed or only watched once as a kid from the 60s, 70s, and the 50s and stuff like that. And the more you watch things that have a story and that have characters,
yeah,
the less you want to put that poison cup of whatever Amazon is doing, whatever Netflix, like you realize the only one raising that cup to your lips is you.
yeah,
And I think it was important to have spoken up about all the things that we all did at a time when I thought when we all believed that it would have made a difference. Do I think all of us bitching about everything that we did for as much as we did helped? I think it did to a certain point, but ultimately it was the normies who don't even watch YouTube or don't know my name, your name, anybody's name, don't know even the big guy. They don't even know who the fuck they are, but who literally said, I don't want this in my life. And I'd like to think that maybe things are going to turn around a little bit, but I'm not convinced yet. If we are having this conversation 3 years from now and we're getting movies, if we get 2 or 3 movies in the next year or two that become classics, and I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine falls in that category. I think it was entertaining, but I'm not going to ever watch it again because there's no point, you know. But if we start to get something like a Jaws or a Ghostbusters or something new, then maybe I'll talk about we've turned a corner. But anybody selling you that like, oh, woke is lost, don't believe them because
mm,
just because they're making a couple movies because they need to make money doesn't mean that they've changed shit, you know?
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm not convinced until I see it. I mean, like you hear
Yeah.
so many false reports saying, "Oh, this is saved, that is saved."
Well, those big channel grifters gotta lie to you. You know, like people are kind of over the hate and the shit talking and hearing about Star Wars is dead and all this other. At least I am, and so now they're actually creating false hype, in my opinion, to get people to respond to what I consider to be false optimism. And there's nothing worse than lying to people and telling people what you think they want to hear, so they'll send you $100 or a $500 super chat. I think that's fucking despicable. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's negative, but you know what? We're going to get through all of this by being honest
Yeah,
and not
that's
by manipulating each other for financial gain, because that's what
yeah,
Hollywood has been doing this whole time.
yeah.
You
That's
know?
why I try to be. I mean, I try to be as real. I try to be as real as possible.
Yeah.
So if I don't like
Yeah.
something or I feel differently, I'm going to say so. And
Well, I just remember the bullshit that you put up with Picard, and I'm not going to turn this into a Star Trek stream, but it's like, you know, I was right there with you. I'm like, what do you like? It's just whatever the cool kids, and you know the ones I'm talking about in the fellatio ship, like they get their memo, and then everybody has to repeat it, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is kind of bullshit, and here's why. And it's just like, guy, like
yeah.
just
And
fucking
I mean,
whatever.
and then here's the thing, though. I mean, part of it, I thought maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I just maybe I'm just not interested in the stuff. And then I rewatched a TNG 2-parter, Chain of Command. I'm like, nope,
No,
nope,
no, I mean,
not me.
do you remember us talking behind the scenes? Because we, like, all of us talk behind the scenes, like, about shit, and we'll text each other. But I was like, Brian, you don't need to apologize for not liking shitty things. Like, you
Yeah,
don't, you know,
exactly.
you're allowed to like what you like. It's like, if you don't like things that I like, that's totally cool. I mean, it's just like we live and let live. That doesn't mean we're not going to break some balls. But in the case of something like Picard, and anything Paramount has done with the Star Trek franchise, and I don't know, maybe since the early 2000s,
Yeah,
fuck off
pretty
with
much
that.
Enterprise. Yeah, I mean, after that,
Yeah.
it just
Hey,
became
cheers.
it's not what it was. Yeah, what's up, Java Bean Studio?
But I just, you know, this movie, again, it is an epic. This is the type of movie that would have been in that Vistascope, which, again, there was probably a 30-40 foot screen, and it had a
Yes.
curve. It
Yep,
had a
I've
curve
seen
to it.
those.
And
When 2001
yep,
hit its 50th anniversary, I went to the what was the
yeah,
theater in Chicago? It was the music. I think it's called the Music Box.
yeah.
Went to the
It,
music box in Chicago. Got to see the movie on the big screen, curved theater, 70 millimeter.
wow.
2001: A Space Odyssey. Got to see. So
I would kill to see that. I would.
yeah, that was the one that Christopher Nolan helped
Restore.
restore. Yeah, so
Yeah.
but yeah, that was an interesting experience because it was mostly Zoomers, people younger than me, much younger than me. Seeing, I was expecting older people to be there, but it was a bunch of Zoomers. But then again, I'm in the Lincoln Park
Yeah.
neighborhood of Chicago, so it's going to be all a
Yeah.
bunch of young,
Yeah.
recently either they're in college or they're recently graduated, and they're I don't know, probably
I have
living off of their either their money or their parents' money, who knows, but they're living in that
I
really
have
expensive part of the city. But
yeah.
that's not that,
Yeah.
but that's not important right now.
No, but I mean, seeing those movies in the original format. There's another John Wayne movie, and I don't think it's John Ford. I think it's Hawks, called Hondo. And
Hondo.
Hondo was
Okay.
shot in a way where I think they had 3 projectors. I'm not even kidding. They had, I think, 3 synchronized projectors or something, because they changed the aspect ratio of the screen. It's so wide.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until a few years ago where they finally managed to create, because it wasn't 16:9, it was a lot more rectangular and narrow,
Yeah.
for this Western movie. But it's one of my favorite John Wayne movies ever, Hondo. It's just such an amazing movie. Oh, thank you, Dan. The War of the Worlds. I'd love to do another radio play. It's just I can't tell you how many hours that took for you two to bury it, and then they copyright claim me on it.
Oh, did they? No way.
Dude, honest, Brian, I don't. 70% of my catalog has been copyright claimed by people who I used copyright free music. And what happens is other shitbags from, let's say, India or China will take a copyright free song and then they will change it slightly and then they will take all of your revenue from your videos. And it's part of the reason why I kind of stopped doing this was
dipped
because
out.
I put a lot of work in a lot of things and fought as much as I could to the point where I got another strike for raising such a shit over my shit being stolen by these shitbags. And it's just YouTube doesn't care. And, they don't care about me. I'm not Disbrew. I mean, in no disrespect, I love Disbrew a lot. Like,
Who doesn't love Disbrew? I mean, the reason why I started watching Star Trek again was because of he did a recent video about, Star Trek franchise because of them talking about them releasing a trailer for that Section 31 made for streaming video movie. So it's not made for TV movie anymore. It's made for streaming movie, and it looks awful. I'm like, this is not.
I got all this.
This is not Star Trek. There's no gravitas. It looks stupid. I mean, heck, even the Fast and the Furious movies, I think are more respectful and than that. I'm like, what is that? It's so stupid. Like I've seen they've done. I'm sure they've done heists at some point, but like this is Section 31. It's supposed if you're gonna make a Section 31 movie, it's got to be dark. It's got to be dark. Well, it's got to be challenge. Yeah. It's got to be challenging the brain. It's got to be challenging your. I mean, the whole point of that Inquisition episode, Deep Space Nine, was to challenge our heroes in that show, especially Dr. Bashir, on the existence. There's the possibility that everything that we hold dear can be lost by outside forces, and those outside
which
forces,
is what's going on in real life.
And you need people. You need killers. You need people. Well, kind of like John Wayne's character, who are willing to, crawl or willing to fight in the mud or go get into the grit in order to, and do bad shit in order for certain people to be happy and to survive. And that's kind of what the point of Section 31 was, even though, I mean, they're still, I mean, the show presents them as bad, but it's a good, compelling thing that it's not an easy thing to side with. That's why it's a good thing to think. And everything. And Mark Clark, thanks for being here. And yes, that's an awesome gift. That's an awesome gift. Deep Space Nine on DVD.
Yeah. We're coming up on an hour and a half. Did you want to kind of go to the ending?
Yeah, let's move. Well, so she likes Jeffrey Hunter. Who doesn't? I mean, he's got the face of a movie star, the eyes of a movie star. This is before Paul Newman. Yeah. And so, but here, you want to know, it's because he's a musician. The ladies all love their musicians and all that. And he's just singing "Skip to Maloo, Skip to Maloo." I'm like, yep, he's singing "Skip to your dude," and you're singing "Skip to Maloo" to the girl. Yep, she's like, okay, I'm gonna forget handsome Jeffrey Hunter. I'm gonna go with this old dude right here. So
well, chicks dig musicians. I mean, look at fucking Mick Jagger, and Keith Richards. The chicks were banging him forever, and it looks like he fell down a flight of stairs face first onto a cheese grater. You know what I mean? But he can sing.
Yeah. Exactly. And so they basically pretty much, there's a wedding. She's going to marry that dude. And then they're like, okay, we just got back. You're having a wedding? What the heck? Why don't you wait for me? He's like, you didn't write to me. You didn't write to me, bitch. Or she's saying that to him. He's like, you didn't write it all. You only wrote once in 3 years. He's like, well, I was busy. So, and then so they get into a nice little fight right here. Yeah. He's like, we're going to fight over her. And they're like, please stop. And she's like, he's like, it's your fault. He's like, you started it. He's laughing. He's like, why should I stop it? And then, I like how he takes her mother and pushes her into the house.
Yeah. But you can see how much time went by. And you can see it because John Wayne was doing younger like he's not actually this old in 1957. The way he looked on screen was how he looked probably in the mid 70s, right before he died. And I remember this. I remember the night they announced John Wayne died. I was staying at my grandparents' house, and I think it was around the holidays. And it came on the news. It was a breaking news bulletin around 10 o'clock at night. And they just said that John Wayne had died. And it was a really, this is obviously before we had cable TV, computers, in the 70s. And it was a big deal. It was a very impactful moment. And for weeks on end, people were running tributes to him. And it's funny because where I live now, John Wayne spent a lot of time here on the Olympic Peninsula. Mm-hmm. He actually bought an island off the coast of British Columbia, Brian. He bought an island. And do you know what John Wayne did with all of his money? He imported animals from Africa and put them on an island off the coast of British Columbia. So you'll see all of these crazy African animals, and there's signs posted, no trespassing, because the John Wayne estate still owns this island that he bought to put all these African animals that survived, because we do get snow here once in a while, but it's just kind of crazy. And then here where I live in Port Angeles, about 20 miles away on the other side of Sequim, there's the John Wayne Marina. John Wayne wanted to have a place to put his own boat so he wouldn't have to deal with people. So he built a marina. And it's a big marina, for himself. And obviously he passed away, but it's just John Wayne, an indelible impact upon American culture. And I used to fly to SoCal all the time. And there's this huge bronze statue in the Orange County Airport in California. Yeah.
All right, well, Java Bean, thanks for being here. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
But just to wrap up this movie right here. So yeah, they find out that that they found them. Basically, we got this funny exchange between this young soldier and him. He's like,
young lieutenant.
Yeah,
like a green. The last thing you want to do in a country like that is follow a first Louis on his first assignment. I'll tell you that. But,
exactly. Yeah. I like how harsh the minister / marshal.
But these are tough guys.
Yeah,
these are tough guys.
He's like out with it. He's like out with it. Son. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
and it gets pretty funny. But they are able to track down.
Look
Scar
at the color.
Yeah.
Look at what they did with light. Again, this is John Ford operating with purely analog equipment.
Yeah, they put like a filter. I believe they put a filter to make it look like it's
But I mean,
night.
It looks convincing. There's never a moment in this film where your suspension of disbelief is wrecked. And again, I talked about it earlier in our conversation, but John Ford, when he cast the extras, the guys over there that were part of the cavalry, he meticulously went through the people that he thought would look most convincing, even though they never say a word. But it's all about immersion. And he was such a perfectionist where he didn't want anybody to watch his movie and for one moment notice that something was technically off, or that a uniform was off, or that someone didn't look right in casting. And Brian, do you know what went through my mind is when they're putting people from Africa in the role of Queen Elizabeth, or people from another continent in a position, or Puerto Rican elves in the Rings of Power. And it's like, again, the reason why John Ford said it is any little thing that pulls you out of this movie does a disservice to the entire thing that I'm making.
Yes.
And it's
they don't, and nobody cares about it. And if you say something like that, just, I mean, nerds like to be consistent, we like things to be done right. And then this started happening how many years ago now? Like over 10 years. I started noticing stupid stuff, and then it just got stupider and stupider to the point where it's just it's hard to get behind anything that they're doing. So yeah. So like right here, for instance, I like how the ending is really quick. Like I was hoping there would be like a bigger standoff with the villain,
Well,
but not really.
that's John Ford said that deliberately. He said, again, the biggest thing with battles and conflict is how do they start? Getting ready for it, and then again, the conflict. It's brutal and it's quick, and the action is quick, and then it's over, and then you go to the next conflict. And it's an interesting way of doing things. Still, I think the fighting scene here between the Native Americans and John Wayne coming in to rescue his niece, I mean, I think it's really, really effective.
Yeah, I agree. The
Thanks,
thing
Dan.
what the Yeah, thanks, Dan. The thing is, like, even the villain wasn't as important as we thought he was. What was really important, and what we see at the very end of the movie. Oh yeah, right here, he scalps him. I forget what
Yeah,
happened. So when he shot when he shot the other corpse earlier in the movie in the eyes, it was because
yeah.
they believed that they believe that they still have their eyes and their senses when they're in the afterlife. So
So they can find their way to the hunting
so they can,
ground of
yeah.
their
And so
people.
John
Yeah,
Wayne was Ethan John Wayne is like, I'm taking that shit away from you. You
yeah,
did
that's what
something
he
bad
said.
to me, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why, like, why are you doing that? Because because of that. So, and I forget what it means here with him scalping the guy. I
Well,
don't know. It was just, is
it's
that
about
another
power.
is
It's about, well, it's about and I'm probably going to butcher
is it
this in the
another is it
in film.
another afterlife thing? Like,
No,
is he gonna
it's
go to
coup.
hell because
It's
is
called counting coup, and you take that and you put it on the tip of your spear to ride out as a warrior to show how fierce you are.
up
Hey, gents,
Jacob?
what's up? Or sorry, hey Jacob. No, I mean, and again, I don't want to butcher it, but that's what I always understood is it was a way to show that you defile your enemy and you've beaten your enemy is by taking that, and it would disgrace him in the eyes of other Native Americans. So
Because at this point he is dead. Jeffrey Hunter Martin killed him. So yeah, so
yeah,
when he was like trying to wake her up, wake Natalie Wood up, he turns around, he's there, like he's
yeah,
Clint Eastwood before Clint Eastwood, obviously.
yeah,
It
yeah.
reminds me, I've never seen Rawhide. I've heard the theme. I grew up, my parents always sang that theme. And even before seeing the Blues Brothers, my parents
Yeah, I was
always
gonna
sang that.
say the Blues
My
Brothers is the
dad and my
best.
mom used to sing that theme to me to wake me up when I was a little
It
boy.
used to be. It used to be on TV. Everything used to be on TV in the 70s and then the 80s, especially like on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
The Cisco Kid, the Flash Gordon serials.
Mm-hmm.
We should talk about those, Brian. Like, I don't. Have you seen the original Flash Gordon stuff?
Oh yeah, I've Buster Crab.
Buster
Yeah,
Keaton.
I've
I mean,
Buster Crab.
Buster Crab.
Buster Keaton.
Yeah,
Buster Keaton was the
I
silent guy
know.
that was that.
I know. I know. It's a.
Buster
Um.
Crab was the Olympic swimmer.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you know that, but yeah,
But
I saw all three. I saw Flash Gordon, and then Flash Gordon goes to Mars, and then Flash Gordon conquers the universe. So all three of
they're
them.
great serials, Dr. Zarkov. But yeah, I mean, again, it's the groundwork is there. A 3-act play, a 4-act play. The easiest thing in the world is to create a serial. I mean, again, George Lucas wrote Star Wars just like the Flash Gordon story. Every scene should be 2 minutes and be a self-contained story that does something. And in this, just look at all these scenes. I mean, again, I'm blown away by this movie. This
And
movie is
look at
16
all
years
those
old.
horses. Like, look at all those horses, and
Yeah.
getting to do that takes insane amount of effort, and because you're dealing with horses.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, this is a lot. So this is a long movie. It is a beautiful movie. It is best seen. Obviously, to me, watching this movie on a laptop is just don't watch it on a TV. And if
So
you got to go ahead,
this
Brian.
this part right here was pretty much what everybody was waiting for, because like last time we saw them and they sing together, he was about to shoot her, and Jeffrey Hunter
Well, he was going to kill
was covering. He
her
was going to kill her, and so
because to save her.
we're wondering. Well, yeah, because she's still
She ran away from him because she essentially has been passed around and used by all of the bucks,
yes,
all the young
yeah,
men in the tribe.
yeah.
And he didn't want to leave her like that, knowing what they would do to her. And he stopped looking for her to save her, and he was looking for her to end her life, to, in his mind, give her a merciful escape to go to heaven as a Christian and be with their family who was massacred by the Comanches.
Yeah.
And this scene is incredibly powerful, just like you said, Brian.
Yeah, and because like here you're like, what is he going to do? Is he going to kill her? Because like
Thank you, Dan.
we've seen what he's capable of, and here she's terrified of him for good reason. We're terrified for her too, but apparently, nope, he's not. He's like, we're going home.
And then she puts his arms around him, and people can say it's schmaltzy or whatever it is, but there it is. And you can see the tenderness of this cold-hearted killer.
Yes.
But he's not evil. Okay.
No.
And that's the thing. You can be an anti-hero and do very mercenary, brutal things for the right reasons. And I really hope the younger generations understand that. Like, you are not going to make it by tweeting about things or talking about things. Sometimes you have to do things that are very difficult and very dangerous to keep things. That's all I'm going to say,
Yeah. I mean, I love when stories have anti-heroes because it makes them just automatically, in my opinion, makes them more interesting. But it also, it makes me, how would I say it? It makes me invested in the story in a way is if are they going to be good? And sometimes I hope that they become good, and they become good and allies and friends with the hero, basically.
Well,
that's something I always see. Like that's always something I like is this thing called redemption, which seems to be missing a lot of entertainment. I like to think that people can come back, and that there's just some misguided people out there and everything.
Dan, I consider him heroic to a great degree, but I have to be careful about what I say. And I'll talk about it on a live stream, but I know someone who he helped back before he ever had a political career, and who was brutalized and horribly injured by people and had no money, and he paid for all of her rehabilitation, and you never read about it in the newspapers. And we're talking a lot of money, and then paid for care for the rest of her life in one of the best places, a private facility in New England. And that is the Donald Trump that I think about. In this other shit that I've been seeing, I don't pay a lot of attention to it. I got to be real careful about what I talk about with who I am and what I do. Let's just say, I've been around government officials before, and know over and over what happens in these organizations. And I really hope that he wins, and I really hope that we get somebody like Elon Musk to start holding people accountable. And I really hope we stop going into wars that don't have a point. And I'd really like to have my fucking country back before it's too late. And that's about all I'm going to say there, So, sorry, Brian.
Don't worry.
I'm 54 years old and I've lived a lot of life. I'm just going to say that. So, yeah.
Yep. Lived through a lot of presidents too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this is truly the conclusion of his character arc right here, and then this part right here I thought was funny with the judge. So apparently he got shot in the ass.
He got shot in the ass.
they're picking out the bullets one by one, and he's just like, "Ow!"
So there's something interesting that happens if you can go to the last scene in the door, Brian, because John Ford did something absolutely genius. So you'll see. He spent 5 years of his life. So right there.
Yeah.
You start the movie seeing him in the door because he's coming in from the wilderness from being this bad man, this anti-hero who's fought in these wars, who's a tough guy, who
Yeah.
you don't know if you like him or not, but he has a quest, right? At the
Yes.
end of the movie, this safety, this home, you know, where he came back to the first time, he never comes in to join the people that he rescued in to live this life of safety or relative safety that he sacrificed everything to protect.
Yeah.
He turns around and goes back out into that wilderness and into that battle to keep being that man that does these things to keep others safe so that they can live like this. And the door is closed. It's so powerful. And, you know, when I watched this when I was a teenager, it didn't really strike me, but now it does. I mean, look at him. He turns around and he's like, I'm going to go back to what I know, you
Yeah.
know?
It's bitter. It's a bittersweet. It's a very bittersweet type of ending.
Yeah.
But we learned
Yeah.
quite a bit about the character. I mean, he redeems himself because of that. Because of that last scene with him and Natalie Wood. Not a bad person, but it's just like this is, you know,
It's a bad world, and sometimes
it's
you
a
have
bad.
to do bad things
Yes,
for good.
and
You know?
it's where he feels he belongs, basically. So
Yeah.
he's kind of like, you know, like we're talking about Section 31. You know, he's one of those type of people that's going to be out there protecting people like you know, like his family, the Jorgensens, from the outside elements, the existential threats to them. You
And
know,
but
in
you
this
can
case, it was
see
Comanches. So
you can see how this evolved into the man with no name. You know, you can absolutely see how the character
he's a
that
loner.
Clint
I mean,
Eastwood.
yeah. So let's go. Let's
Yeah,
talk a little bit about. I know it's been an
I
hour and
need to
40.
go,
So
Brian.
I gotta go. All right,
Yeah, I
but
haven't eaten dinner yet, so yeah, it's 8 something on the West
but
Coast. So
yeah. So but like the Man with No Name, the spaghetti western. It just sets the stage for the darker, gritty stuff. I mean, Clint Eastwood's character is very stoic. He doesn't say
yeah,
much because he's seen a lot of action and a similar thing, and a little bit more of an anti-hero. He's a little more opportunistic. Kind of, you don't know, you kind of don't know
it was
what if
also
he's
the
good or
time.
bad. Yeah,
It was also the time. I mean, those movies in the 60s had a different vibe because the decade of the 60s was very different for the United States than the decade of the 50s. You know,
yeah.
and it was that's a whole other conversation, but you can see it and it was a lot more loose in things like that. But I am Dan Crane. Oh, well, I tell you what, you can break it up. You know, just Google where the original intermission was, and then just like sleep, and then watch the second half tomorrow night because if it's late where you are. But yeah, dude, I love talking about these westerns, and I I I I don't know. I would love to watch How the West Was Won with you. That's a whole other animal, dude. That is
I
a
know.
commitment to watch that.
I know it's like a
Jesus,
3 to 4 hour movie if I remember
it
correctly.
is. It is. Yeah.
It's also John Ford. Yeah, John
Like
Ford's
Henry.
epic saga.
Yeah. Yeah. But thanks for having me on. You know what I really want you to watch now? You don't have to, but Hondo. I want you to watch Hondo because I think you'd love that movie, Brian. It's a beautiful movie.
Okay. Yeah, but yeah, Hondo sounds pretty interesting. So yeah, I got a lot of westerns to watch. One show I do want to watch that looks pretty freaking cool from the '60s is called Have Gun Will Travel.
Oh,
I
dude,
want to see
totally.
that. I want to
My
see that.
dad, my dad was an engineer. So this is going back to the early 80s, and it was a local television station, and my dad was a technician. But they used to send the old films to TV stations. This is before satellite uplinks. This is before all that stuff. And I remember helping my dad splice together these reels of Have Gun Will Travel to show on the local television TV station. And it was crazy because I remember he would do the overnight shift until I think they turned off power at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But I remember watching Have Gun Will Travel and hearing that film strip projector noise while it played because they'd show it like at 11:30 at night or whatever it was. But these are great. These are great, entertaining, fantastic TV shows, and we're never going to run out of them. You know?
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
Jacob. Yes.
there's one quick thing I'm curious. I'm curious. I mean, one author who we all disagree with on his terrible takes on politics wrote an epic fantasy that takes place in the
Oh,
mostly
you're
in the
talking about
Wild
Dark
West.
Tower?
Yes.
Dark Tower.
I'm curious if they can if someone can take that idea and make a true epic fantasy without having to go into alternate worlds and stuff like that. Like,
I'm looking over at my books right now. There's so much epic fantasy on the shelf that they've never done. The Belgariad.
okay, is that like is that a Western?
No, but it's fantasy stuff. I'm trying to think of something that has a Western. See, you know, I was talking about this with Purple Valkyrie. Where's all the steampunk stuff? Because I think steampunk Western is something that it was like in vogue for a little while, but nobody ever made anything with it. And they tried to make something like Immortal Engines, which was terrible. Yeah. But I mean, I think that you could work magic.
I don't know if they've done the whole. I mean, when I was super into anime in the 2000s, they had stuff, steampunk type of stuff. One particular movie by the Akira director is called Steam Boy. So
yeah.
Other than anime, I don't know what else. I mean, the closest thing would be the Wild Wild West.
I know. I know. It was more of a theoretical, but no, the Dark Tower. They're never going to do it the right way. They're never going to cast it the right way. But
that first book was really, really crazy, but it was very fantasy. Like it was very
Yes.
I know Gadfly hates the book, but he loves the poem that's based on.
I read it once and I never went back to it. So, and I didn't read any other stuff. And, I think Stephen King is not very good at prose, but he writes pretty good stories. And, especially if somebody's reading, an audiobook is a lot better than trying to suffer through his sentences. But
okay. Makes sense.
This was fun.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this. It's been a while since I've done Chilporiel.
Look at Dan. Sorry. Look at Dan. Dan's crushing it. And Jacob too. He's got the chess piece. That's awesome. Yeah. Have Gun Will Travel. The Rifleman is really good too. Oh, the Rifleman is really good. I think
Rawhide, Gunsmoke, Bonanza. Yeah.
Yep. Gunsmoke is so good. Death Valley Days, A Big Valley. Those are great shows, and you get to see Lauren Green, who
yep. Yeah, he was in Battlestar Galactica, Bonanza.
Yes, he was.
Yep. Yep.
Those are great. I know.
All right. Is there Salty? Is there anything you want to promote? Is there any? I know you did. I know you've been making some nice little music videos that may or may not be relevant to our times.
Well, I just I love editing video. Like I love editing video. I wish more people saw the editing of the video that I make. But just putting some things out. I've been playing a lot. I'm probably going to be doing something related to Tolkien again, and from a different perspective. So
I'm going to be doing something like that too in a few weeks.
Dude, that show has nothing to do with Tolkien.
I know. I'm
gonna like make fun of you guys for banging your head on the table watching this.
I got
no interest in that shit. Yeah, I got no interest in that shit at all.
That's a very good. That's a very valid reason. So, all right, but yeah. So for me, Chilporiel will be again. There's gonna be another Chilporiel on Thursday. We'll be talking about fantasy. I'll let my outro reveal who the secret guest is. But that's Thursday. I'm gonna try. I want to do another movie. I want to do another movie thing. I'm gonna separate that from Chilporiel and make it a movie, like an exclusive movie stream like I've done before with like horror movies and Christmas movies. So I want to cover
The Fog. Can we do The Fog from 1980?
We'll do okay. We'll do the fog. We'll make this next month. You know, when fall starts, we'll serial horrors chat will come back. We'll do the fog, Salty. All right, you got the fog.
Valkyrie will strangle you if you don't invite her, because like I'd like.
I'll invite her too.
Horror.
I'll invite her too. We'll cover the fog and I can't tell a story as well as John Houseman can, but I'll try. I'll try. I'll lead the stream as well as I think I can. So, all right. So we'll cover that. But I want to do another movie stream, Western stream. I'm trying to look for a guest. I want to do The Great Silence, because the end of that film, the final segment, the final 7 minutes of that film has stayed with me for like the last week. Like, instead of listening to music, I've been listening to the Morricone music, because the end of the film is almost a silent movie. But it's so freaking tragic. It is so tragic. The music builds up so freaking brilliant. Like, I wanted to talk about it today, but we just don't have time. So that's why I showed the clip. I showed those 2 clips of Jean-Louis Trintignant and Klaus Kinski, because that scene is etched in my mind. The music in the scene is etched in my mind. So, but yeah. It's a sad movie. What can I say?
Ask DJ Ronnie G. Maybe he likes Westerns. He's crazy and he has turtles. He has a good channel. I want to shout out DJ Ronnie G. If you're not subscribed to him, please do. This guy over engineers things at an impressive rate, but does some really great things with astronomy and looking at planetary orbits, and brings up some kind of wacky science stuff. And it's truly deep, hard nerd stuff. So if you're into that, the more techie side of stuff, check out DJ Ronnie G. Just want to shout him out, because I watch his stuff and I blows my mind. I love watching him set the universe in motion with all of his complicated software. So
when I eventually read the Hyperion, the first Hyperion book, I definitely want to have him on, because he's read the books. Yeah. So I definitely want to have him on and hear his take on that. So, but yeah, eventually, I'm reading through In Between Two Fires right now, which is that one with the angels and the demons on Earth during the Black Death. I've been really slow to read anything. I want to get back to reading Lord of Chaos, Wheel of Time, and do the book club streams. See if I can get some of the White Cloaks, maybe Salty, maybe bring you on for a few. Steve, everybody, and. Yeah, I want to get that going again, because I have I have all 14 books, thanks to Thrift, thanks to that store that you introduced me to. Now I have all 14 books of the Wheel of Time.
Dude, I love that used bookstore, thriftbooks.com.
Yeah, so I want to do that again, and I do want to make some video content. I want to make some video essays, write some video essays. I just have been really lazy and unmotivated. So yeah.
Or Brian, there's been a better use of your time, which isn't to take anything away from the YouTube audience at all. But I mean, after the gauntlet that we've been run and the names we've been called for, we've known each other for almost 4 years now. We're together for probably 3.5, 4 years. After all the shit that we've seen, Brian, you know what? It's okay to be like, you know what? I'm going to kind of rethink this, because at a certain point, I think it gets to everybody. But thanks for having me on, and thanks to everybody in chat. So.
Yeah, so this will have to be a topic for another stream. We never quite got to it. So
Nas, you need to get a microphone and talk with Nerdporial about that movie. Okay?
He is. I've talked to Nas. I've talked to Nas in ways you can't even begin to imagine. So,
oh wow, phone sex with Nas.
Yes, phone sex. It's been phone sex.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here, yeah, all the way. All right, guys. Thanks for being here, and let's find out. So come back Thursday night for the next Chillporial, and let's find out who is going to be on.
Brian,
what?
Brian, stay Nerdporial.
Stay Nerdporial, people. Later.